According to international standards, Japan is one of the safest countries in the world. However, in those rare instances when something horrible happens there, the perpetrator always seems to take the situation to the extreme. If you were to ask someone from the United States about the worst crime ever committed in Japan, they would likely mention Unit 731 or maybe Nevada Tan, or generally any other high-profile case that gained worldwide attention. But apparently, if you were to ask a Japanese person, the incident that often comes to mind first is one that is rarely discussed and generally disliked by the press and YouTubers, because the details are clearly not for everyone. But let's take the risk, since you're on my channel where from time to time I study real crimes. On the morning of May 27, 1997, a janitor at an elementary school in the city of Kobe went to start his shift. His mornings always began earlier than the students and teachers at sunrise. Yet even during such quiet and peaceful hours, there was a sense of unease in the air, which had been lingering for some time. The city of Kobe had not yet recovered from a series of terrorist attacks earlier in the year, when an unknown madman assaulted several local teenagers. In February, 2 schoolgirls walking home from school were struck with hammers on the back of their heads. The perpetrator managed to escape before anyone could get a good look at him. Thankfully, despite suffering severe head injuries, both girls made a full recovery. However, as it turned out, this was not an isolated incident. On March 16th, the perpetrator struck again, this time targeting 10-year-old Ayaka Yamashita and 9-year-old Kazumi Ishikawa. Ayaka suffered a serious head injury, while Kazumi, who he attacked just 10 minutes later, was stabbed in the stomach with a sharp blade. Ayaka sustained a traumatic brain injury and died a little over a week after the attack, while Kazumi survived the ordeal. The assailant's blade stopped just short of severing her spinal artery, and unlike the other victims, Kazumi was able to get a good look at the man's face. Detectives immediately realized that the same person was behind all 4 attacks. He left his calling card near each crime scene, mutilated animal carcasses. In one place, they found a headless pigeon, and in another, a squirrel. As May drew to a close, it had been 2 months since the last attack by the unknown maniac. Although he was still at large, the parents of the children, the teachers, and the students dared to breathe a sigh of relief that this abnormal person was simply getting tired of it all, withdrawing into himself or realizing he was making mistakes. But the sigh of relief eventually turned into anxiety. On May 24th, an 11-year-old local boy, Jun Haza, went missing. Everyone suspected that the same elusive killer was behind his disappearance. On the morning of that fateful May 27th, the janitor approached the school and noticed small, dark objects lying on the ground near the main entrance. As he got closer, he realized they were the mutilated remains of 2 pets. At first, he didn't understand what was going on and worriedly walked on, noticing another object at the foot of the main gate. And on closer inspection, he realized it wasn't just an animal. It was the severed head of Yun Haza, the same boy who had gone missing just 3 days ago. The eye sockets were empty, and small X marks were carved into his forehead. Inside his mouth, which was cut from ear to ear, lay a crumpled paper note. On it, the detectives were left with a mocking message, written in red ink. "This is the beginning of the game. Police, stop me if you can." A little further down, the perpetrator also wrote a message in English with mistakes, and at the end it was signed Sakakibara Seito. This was a pseudonym created using kanji characters meaning sake, devil, rose, saint, and fight. That same day, 500 meters to the west of the school on the mountain known as Reservoir Mountain, the headless body of the boy was found. It was carefully hidden, and it was soon established that the head had been cut off with a handsaw and then mutilated with the same tool. Despite the call for information, no new witnesses came forward. Nevertheless, newspapers and television channels reported that the perpetrator was most likely a man in his 30s or 40s with a very strong build. 2 weeks after the discovery of Jun's head, a brown envelope with no return address arrived at the editorial office of one of the largest city newspapers, Kobe Shimbun. Inside was a 3-page letter written by a person claiming to be the killer. In the letter, totaling about 500 words, the following was summarized. "I am risking my life for this game. If they catch me, I will likely be hanged. The police must be more sensitive and persistent in pursuing me. Only when I commit violence do I free myself from constant hatred and find peace." The author of the letter stated that he would target schools out of his hatred for the Japanese education system, which he claimed had made him a repressed, isolated, and lonely person. The letter was again signed Sakakibara Seito. However, due to the widespread panic and confusion, the Japanese media mistakenly called him Anibara Devil Rose. This mistake cost the journalists dearly, as it prompted Sakakibara to send another letter to the newsroom. "From now on, if you mispronounce my name or ruin my mood, I will destroy 3 vegetables a week. If you think I'm only targeting children, you're very wrong." Vegetables meant members of the general public, meaning literally that he would take 3 random lives a week if someone mispronounced his name again. Eventually, a young man with a history of animal cruelty came to the attention of the investigators. With the help of Kazumi herself, they had enough evidence to charge him. And so, finally, on June 28th, a month after June's head was found near the school gates, this nightmare came to an end. The arrest of a 14-year-old suspect was announced. The public was shocked that the culprit was such a young teenager. Due to strict Japanese privacy laws, the suspect's name remained unknown for decades, and he was referred to as Boy A in the news. However, his real name was recently revealed: Shinichiro Azuma. He attended the same school as June Hasa, where the head was found. Azuma told the authorities how he lured June up the mountain on Saturday, May 24th, promising to show him a giant turtle that lived by the water reservoir. They climbed the stairs together. There, Azuma strangled June with a regular shoelace and then hid his body under a blanket in a nearby shed. The next day, he returned with a handsaw and a black trash bag. There, he removed June's head and even drank some of his clean blood. He explained that he did this to purify his own, which he considered unclean. He also removed his eyes, explaining that he did this to extract his soul. He took the head back to his home and then placed it at the main gate of his school on May 27th. When asked why he did this, Azuma simply replied that he had a strong urge to kill that day. And when he came across Jun, who was heading to his grandparents' house, he remembered that the boy loved turtles and saw him as easy prey. Azuma claimed to feel a sense of elation that the boy now belonged to him. His reasons for leaving the head near the elementary school were twofold. First, it was a distraction. Azuma believed that detectives would never think the killer would leave his creation near his own school. Second, he saw it as an act of revenge on the school itself, the institution that he believed had crushed his spirit and turned him into a shell of his former self. During interrogation by the investigators, Azuma not only confessed to taking June's life, but also claimed that he was the one who had attacked 4 schoolgirls earlier in the year, including Ayaka Yamashita, who died from her injuries. Speaking of Ayaka, Azuma wrote in his diary, "Today I conducted a special experiment to confirm how fragile human beings are. I hit her with a hammer when she turned to face me. It seems I hit her a few more times, but I was too excited to remember." When Ayaka died from her injuries on March 23rd, Azuma wrote in his diary again, "This morning, Mom told me that the poor girl who was attacked seems to have died. There is no sign that I will be found. I thank Bamoy Dokishin for that. The police are still looking for me." Who is this Bamoy Dokishin? Such remains unclear. One source claims that it is a deity, often depicted as a floating Buddha's head. But why Azuma decided that this creature was protecting him can only be guessed at. In any case, the handwriting in his diary perfectly matched the letter sent to the media and the note itself. As a result, Shinichiro Azuma was found guilty of the murders of Ayaka and June and sent to a juvenile detention center. His lawyers tried to prove that Azuma did not commit this crime. Japan is infamous for its 99.8% conviction rate. it is often criticized for putting innocent people in jail and forcing them to confess falsely. For comparison, the conviction rate in the US is 90%. In general, his lawyers argued that the perpetrator was left-handed and Azuma was right-handed. In addition, the person who wrote the news notes used many complex phrases and intricate kanji and was undoubtedly a well-read and intelligent person. They respectfully said that Azuma was a C student at best and not smart enough to write them. Not to mention that in his handwritten confession, Azuma claimed to have committed acts that were impossible for a 14-year-old. These statements by Azuma's lawyer prompted his own mother to visit him in prison and ask him face-to-face if he was really guilty of the crimes he was convicted of. Completely calm and sincere, he assured her that it was. On March 11, 2004, less than 7 years later, 21-year-old Azuma was released from prison. After his release, Azuma published a book, a memoir of the 1997 murders. Despite public outrage that he was trying to profit from his horrific deeds and torment the families of his victims, this did not prevent the book from becoming a #1 bestseller in Japan and making Azuma a wealthy man. To top it all off, Azuma sent the families of his victims a personal apology note attached to copies of his own book. This was seen as quite provocative. There were attempts to ban the publication of the memoirs, and some called for new laws to be passed to prevent such people from publishing books related to their crimes. Psychologists later suggested that Azuma was self-absorbed and desperately craved public attention. Even though it happened almost 26 years ago, the infamous Kobe school case is still often spoken of in the land of the rising sun, considered one of the most notorious crimes in modern Japanese history. It had a great impact on the country itself, not only psychologically but also legally. Because of Azuma, the government lowered the minimum age of offenders subject to criminal punishment from 16 to 14. The most terrible thing about this case is perhaps that it could have been foreseen. However, neither his family nor Japan itself could do so until it was too late.